Good evening. Thank you for joining me, Dorothea, on Through an Orthodox Christian Lens. And this episode is going to be all about the spiritual things happening in the world against Christ's Church, the Orthodox Church. And I'm going to share some articles and videos for you on this. So it is May 24th, 2025. And let's get started. So the first one I'm going to show you is an update, first off, on Sister Vasa. I did an episode on her a few days back where she was stripped of her rasa and is now a lay woman again, no longer a nun because of the things that she was doing. There's an update on this, on I guess her response to what happened, what the synod had determined to do with her. Okay. Former Sister Vasa announces apostasy from canonical orthodoxy, joins state-sponsored Ukrainian schismatics. This came out May 19th. What a shame. A shame that she didn't repent and come back to the church. I was hoping that would happen. Instead, she has gone the path of apostasy. Okay, so she says, after being disciplined by the Holy Synod, the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia, for disobedience, just days after she traveled to Kiev to enter into prayerful communion with schismatics and platform persecutors of the Orthodox Church, former Rissa for nun Barbara, Sister Vasa Lauren, announced her apostasy from canonical orthodoxy. During her time in Kiev, she met with several schismatic clerics who had themselves apostatized from the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and were under canonical suspension, attended liturgy with a schismatic community, and interviewed the head of a governmental department that is tasked with shutting down all Orthodox churches and monasteries in the country, giving him a platform to blatantly lie and deny the persecution. She also gave lectures to students of the Schismatic Orthodox Church of Ukraine's Kiev Theological Seminary, and it was then announced that she is joining its faculty next year. However, Lauren's former jurisdiction, Rokor, stands firmly with the canonical and persecuted Ukrainian Orthodox Church led by His Beatitude Metropolitan Onufry of Kiev and all Ukraine, and thus her trip to Kiev was seen as the final straw after years of serious issues. Thus, the Synod confirmed the decision of His Grace Bishop Luke of Syracuse, abbot of Holy Trinity Monastery in Jordanville, to remove her monastic veil for disobedience, thus removing her from the ranks of the monastics. So the day after the Rokor announcement, former Sister Vasa made her own announcement. Rather than obeying the Synod's discipline, she has joined the state-sponsored Orthodox Church of Ukraine. Lauren attempted to shift the issue away from her communion with schismatics in direct disobedience to her own hierarchy and paint herself as a martyr for the anti-war cause. So, this is what she says. For the last 2 years, the Rokor hierarchy has attempted to silence me on the issues connected to Patriarch Kirill's vocal and even heretical support of the criminal Russian aggression against Ukrainians, and his jurisdiction's uncanonical defrocking of clerics for disobedience to his anti-Christian agenda and teaching on quote-unquote holy war. Now the Rokor has issued a decree that was sent to me in Russian using the old pre-revolutionary Russian orthography, which is the only not Soviet aspect of the decree. That is meant to unmake me a nun and to tell me how to dress. For some reason, it has been posted on the Rokor website, perhaps to assure the Kremlin that the Rokor has nothing to do with me anymore. Well, this is very concerning. The Russian aggression, it's really a shame because the attacks on Russians and the church and all that happened more than a decade ago, many, pardon me, many years, NATO and the U.S. Have been training Ukraine to eventually fight Russia in a proxy war, which came about in the past few years. They had been training Ukraine and doing a lot of, according to Larry Johnson, he did a whole blog post on this. And that's a problem, because really what happened is Russia finally responded after 14,000 Russian-speaking Ukrainians in the east, the Donbass and Lugansk, were being killed, civilians, by the Ukrainian government and its army. And she doesn't mention that. She doesn't mention it took years for Russia to respond to this, to finally, help those people there in the region and to stop the aggression that was happening in the Ukrainian government with the neo-Nazis and Nazis in the under Zelensky's government. And so she's making it sound like Patriarch Kirill was heretical support. Some people may not like what His All Holiness Kirill says on certain things, but I don't think it's heretical. So that's her response. We're going to go on. So the article says, however, it is well known that ROKOR has never endorsed war, and in fact several of its hierarchs have explicitly condemned the war. Many have noted that even as a nun, she frequently appeared without her monastic habit in plain clothing. In response, Laren described obedience in such matters as a mental defect. What I wear or do not wear is dictated by common sense, as it is in the case of any adult living in the free world. I don't consult a bishop across the ocean about it, because I am not mentally impaired. Well, that is a nasty response, and it does make her sound mentally impaired, because when a nun is out and about in public, she is to be in her habit, her monastic clothing. And I just find this, yes, she's very disobedient and just terrible. So just 6 months ago, then Sister Vasa published a video discussing whether there is neo-Sergism in ROKOR, and now she is a member of the state-created Orthodox Church of Ukraine, which is an active partner in the state's campaign to drive canonical orthodoxy out of Ukraine. So she sounds very, 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 very arrogant. She's allowed her political and worldly views to overtake her obedience and position as a nun. Very disturbing. It is very well that she's not a nun anymore in the church because of this. This is really terrible. Maybe someday she'll come and turn around and repent. I don't know. But that's the first story. Just wanted to update you on that. Now we're going to go to what's been going on with the Ukrainian church. Anti-Orthodox radicals force cancellation of service by Metropolitan Onufri. This was May 22nd, 2025. A service that was to be celebrated by His Beatitude, Metropolitan Onufri of Kiev and all of Ukraine, had to be canceled yesterday due to the provocations of violent anti-Orthodox radicals. His beatitude was scheduled to be in, can't pronounce it, to celebrate the all-night vigil at St. Nicholas Cathedral in honor of the 35th anniversary of the revival of this diocese. Today, the cathedral was to be consecrated by the primate and a host of hierarchs of the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church. However, on Tuesday, local deputy Alexander Chernevich announced a rally to prevent Metropolitan Onufry from serving, calling the church a cancerous tumor. Revealing his ignorance, Chernevich called Metropolitan Onufry an actual member of the Russian Orthodox Church Synod, though he has in fact not been a member for 3 years since the locals' council in May 2022, at which the UOC withdrew from the Moscow Patriarchate. Yesterday afternoon, well-known provocator Yevgeny Karas and this province council member Viktor Burlik published a video with their own call to disrupt the service by 3 p.m., 2 hours before the vigil was scheduled to start. Local authorities had brought garbage and septic trucks to the cathedral. About 100 protesters were gathered by them, while parishioners also began gathering for the service. The anti-Orthodox radicals became violent and accused the faithful Ukrainians of working for the Russian world, and one of them even poured pig's blood on the cathedral gates. Given the scene of violence and hatred created by the schismatic radicals, the diocese of this place was forced to cancel the service. For the sake of preserving peace and understanding, avoiding clashes and confrontation between residents of the city of this place, the consecration of St. Nicholas Cathedral in this place, with the participation of the primate and episcopate of the UOC, planned for May 22nd, 2022, will not take place. We call on everyone for mutual respect and mutual understanding. Again, preventing the hierarchs to do the consecrating of this church is a spirit of the Antichrist. All of this is Antichrist, a spirit of the Antichrist. It's demonic and it's of the evil one. His Eminence Metropolitan Victor of this place went to the cathedral just to support the faithful parishioners who had gathered there. Despite the aggression and calls for death, the hierarch addressed the crowd with love and forgiveness. We will never forget this celebration. It will forever remain in our memory and be imprinted on our hearts. I sincerely thank you for your strength, for your courage, for standing up for each other, because in our unity is our strength, for patience, for humility, and for love. Let us love one another, even those who don't love us. Let us embrace one another, even those who don't want to embrace us. Let us support one another because God is love, and this is our main weapon. The hierarch also called for continued prayer for the people of Ukraine, its soldiers, this particular province, and all Orthodox Christians, calling for peace to be preserved in their hearts. So they sang the Paschal hymns while the provocateurs shouted threats. Let me see what we have here.
Я щиро вас вітаю сьогоднішнім святом на честь святителя Миколая Чудотворця. На честь престольного свята нашого собору. Це свято ми не забудемо ніколи. Воно назавжди запам'ятається залишиться в нашій пам'яті і закарбується в наших серцях. І пам'ятаємо, що все, що ми робимо, має бути продиктовано любов'ю, взаєморозумінням, взаємоповагою і взаємопрощенням. Це наша місія, це наша позиція християнська, і вона буде завжди незмінною. Любимо один одного, навіть тих, хто нас не любить. Обіймаємо один одного, навіть тих, хто не хоче нас обіймати. Підтримуємо один одного, тому що в нашій єдності наша сила. Свято усіх вас. Я щиро вам дякую за вашу міцність, за мужність, за один одного, тому що в нашій єдності наша сила.
So that's where I think he's speaking on what he was just saying. They're putting this horrible pig's blood down there.
Берегти нашу державність, нашу країну. Ганьба руському міру. Ганьба. 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 Ви не маєте ні честі, ні совісті, ні моралі, ні справедливості. Ганьба! Ганьба! Ні час ви маєте бути знищені. Ганьба! Моралі, ганьба!
Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Terrible, terrible what's going on here. So that is what happened with that service. Another demonic of the evil one using these people to do such terrible things to Christ Church and his people. Christ Church is his people, and I'm talking about both things. No consecration of the church building, and then the people, the parishioners. I'm going to give you one more story on this Ukrainian thing, and then another video that I'm going to share with you. Court seizes historic monastery from Ukrainian Orthodox Church, May 23rd, 2025. An appellate court has ruled that the centuries-old complex of a convent in Ukraine's Zhytomyr province must be transferred from private church ownership to the state. The Rivne Northwestern Appellate Commercial Court decided May 15 to return the St. Basil's Convent complex in Ovruk to state ownership, canceling private property rights held by the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church community since 2006. Legal advisor to Oruk Mayor Anatoly Chizhevsky said the monastery shouldn't remain in private hands because it's an architectural monument of national significance. Oh, here we go again. Well, we got to make this thing a museum. That's what they've been doing with a lot of these things. This is exactly what happened under the Soviets, by the way. They did all this to the churches. They closed them down. They seized them. They made them into museums. It's the same thing. Same kind of thing. In 2006, the Executive Committee of the Ovruk City Council adopted a decision on the basis of which private property rights to the monastery's homestead were registered. Government authorities can't cancel their own decisions if rights or obligations have already arisen based on them, but we consider this unlawful, so we returned to the prosecutor's office to file a lawsuit in court. The ruling upheld an earlier February 10th decision by the Commercial Court of Zhytomyr province, which had been appealed by the church. His Eminence Metropolitan Vizarion of Ovruk is among the hierarchs personally targeted by the Ukrainian state, strongly disputed the court's decision, arguing it violates constitutional principles of church-state separation. The Holy Synod established a monastic community there. The nuns built the building and have been living in this monastery for over 100 years. It belongs to the church, and the church is separate from the state, the Metropolitan said. If someone wants to take it away, that's a raider seizure. It was the monastery was the St. Basil's Church was originally built in the late 12th century on the site of a 10th century wooden church. Following the appellate court's decision, the state must now formally register ownership of the monastery complex. The foundation of the monastic ensemble is the St. Basil Church, which together with the complex of monastic buildings is an architectural monument of national significance. The stone church of St. Basil was built around 1190 by Prince Rurik Rostilovich on the site of a wooden church, which, according to legend, was built in 997 by Prince Vladimir. I can't pronounce the last name. The church repeatedly suffered destruction, most severely in 1321 during the siege of the city by the troops of Lithuanian Prince Gediminas. In 1842, the stone vaults of the ancient Rus's building collapsed. Only 3 apses and part of the northern wall with an arch survived, near which a chapel was erected in 1876, dismantled in the early 1900s. In 1906, a women's community was established there. So they restored the the church, and the restoration began in the 12th century. Forms according to the design of the architect. All reliable parts of the ancient church were included in the new building without changes. Fragments of 12th century frescoes were also preserved. The rebuild of St. Basil Cathedral is a 4-pillar cross-domed single-nave church, 2 round towers with spiral staircase, as you saw in the picture. 1910, on the initiative of Metropolitan Anthony, the women's community was reorganized into a monastery. The first abbess was Abbess Paula. In 1914, 75 nuns resided there. In 1929, the monastery was closed, and the buildings were first transferred to a military unit, then in 1934 to a children's home. During World War II, with the assistance of Bishop Leonidas, 47 nuns again settled in the monastery, which was liquidated in 1958 by order of the Soviet authorities. A children's hospital was placed in its buildings, and later a vocational school. In 1979, St. Basil Church and the monastic building were granted the status of an architectural monument, and in 1984, restoration of the church began. The monastery was restored in 1990. In 1996, 40 residents were living there. Currently, the abbess is Mother Euphalia. Among the holy relics is an icon of St. Macari of Overuck with a particle of his relics. So again, just a continuing of seizing the churches that belong to the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, the Canonical Church, Christ Church. Just another one. Very sad. I'm going to give you now a clip from Tucker's interview with Vadim Novinsky, I think that's how you say it. I'm going to share with you just this little portion, and then, of course, feel free to watch it on your own, the whole thing. I'm just going to start here.
Unfortunately, our government, led by Zelensky, has opened up a campaign of persecution and depression against the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, the largest church in Ukraine, the largest denomination of Christians in Ukraine. Before the war, there were 12,000 parishes and 7 million believers in the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. And despite the fact that it's the largest denomination and that 95 to 97% voted for Zelensky as the president of peace, he is doing this to our church. He's persecuting and oppressing our church.
Dentures versus New Year's permanent teeth in only 24 hours. Do you think you could break these?
We'll just pass over it.
Over the past 10 years, persecution has intensified, and currently, right now, it is leading to terrible consequences. As you know, in Parliament, a law has been passed which actually, in fact, bans the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. So our archbishops are subjected to persecution. There are completely false criminal cases opened up against them. Our parishioners beaten. Our church is taken away. So Satanism is flourishing in Ukraine. So some metropolitans are in prison, some are under house arrest. Some examples are Metropolitan Arseny, who's currently in prison, who's the head of the Svetogorsk Collaborative. He's in prison under completely false accusations. Metropolitan Feodosi, Metropolitan Luca, Metropolitan Anthony, they're all under house arrest. Another big example is Metropolitan Longinus, who's actually has an orphanage in his church, which has more than 600 disabled children. He's a man of love, and he's still being persecuted, all for being faithful to the Ukrainian Orthodox Church.
Точно так же, несмотря на то, что он помогает людям всем, чем может. Это человек любви, но подвергается гонениям. Практически каждый день захватывают.
Every day, churches and temples are seized by soldiers with machine guns who come in, who throw out priests, beat believers, children, old people, women, countless priests, countless attempts of Chernivtsi, which is a temple that's been attempted to be taken over. So every day it is happening all over Ukraine.
В данный момент идут попытки захватов кафедрального собора в Черновцах, неоднократные попытки. И, конечно, это не может не вызывать.
One cannot help but feel deeply dissatisfied with these events, and one cannot help but fear that our churches may continue to experience this persecution from the government.
Как вам сказать, той опасности, что наша церковь может еще дальше подвергаться этим гонениям со стороны власти.
Why do you suppose Zelensky is doing this? What is his motive?
Надо понимать атмосферу, которая сейчас царит в нашей стране. В нашей стране
It is important to understand the atmosphere that currently prevails in the country. It is basically inciting hatred is the basis of politics. The hatred that is based on lies, deceit. Our church tells the truth. Our church exposes sin, and our church basically is, right now, it's a favorable time for our church. Everyone can show their loyalty and faith despite all the persecution, despite all of the oppression. We pray for the authorities. We pray for Zelensky, that at one point they may come to their senses and stop. We truly hope that Zelensky may fulfill his promise and restore religious peace, because 95 to 97% voted for Zelensky, voted for him as a peace president, and for him to stop the religious hatred going on in our country.
Это очень благодатное время для нас. И мы, конечно, несмотря на все гонения, на все притеснения, на все избиения, на захваты, на преступления, которые творятся вокруг нашей церкви.
Why do you think the world has ignored this attack on Christianity in Ukraine?
I can tell you that a year ago, it was impossible to say a word of truth in the Western press, even the American press, about what is happening to the Ukrainian Orthodox Church in Ukraine. There was a whole block on the truth of what is happening in religious life in Ukraine. And the first person to break this wall of silence was you. Who invited Robert Amsterdam, who is the official representative of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, who began speaking the truth, and you broadcast this truth. And for this, thank you. And a big thank you to J.D. Vance, who, while he was still a congressman, raised his voice in support of our church. He was the only politician in the West who defended our church. At that time, it was extremely important for us. But apart from you, no other serious publication would publish and would show what kind of attacks are taking place on the Ukrainian Orthodox Church in Ukraine. Because Zelensky was given a vote of confidence, and in the eyes of the Western public, he became a leader of the nation, and anything that he was doing was accepted without question.
Некий лидер своей нации, и все, что он делает, принималось без всяких сомнений.
Okay, well, we got to hear from a man that is Ukrainian, that lives in Ukraine, is part of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and he says exactly what's been happening. We get the video version, not just the article, but we have this as well. And you'll notice what he said toward the beginning. He said, over the past 10 years, the persecutions are getting worse. Over the past 10 years, meaning this did not start on 2022. Did not start that year. It's obvious that they've been persecuted all this time, these 10 years, which lines up with the coup that was in the Maidan coup in 2014. It's been like this that long. It shows you there's a history of this, and the NATO and CIA and all that involvement in trying to cause divisions, more so with the two Orthodox nations, to ultimately use the Ukrainian people, the soldiers, as cannon fodder to destroy and weaken and destroy the Russians. And it didn't matter how many Ukrainians were being killed, It's 10 to 1. If they killed 20, if 20 Ukrainians, I heard this the other day, you could have 20 Ukrainians dead with only like 10 Russians dead. It was worth it to this globalist group and these anti-Russian people, the NATO and the CIA and the US and the MI6 and all those people involved. They didn't care, and they still don't care. So I wanted to give you that information. There was one more article regarding the persecution against the specifically the Russian Orthodox Church in this case. It says Moldovan bishop prevented from going on pilgrimage to Turkey, third such incident in a month. Okay, so I haven't told you about the Moldovan issue, but His Eminence Archbishop Marcel of, I can't say it, a hierarch of the Moldovan Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate, was detained at the airport for the third time in a month this week. In Holy Week, he was twice blocked from flying to Jerusalem to retrieve the Holy Fire at the Holy Sepulchre, and yesterday he was prevented from going on a pilgrimage to Turkey to venerate the holy places associated with the life of St. Nicholas the Wonder Worker. Following the initial incident, the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights said it would look into the matter. This latest incident comes just days after the Archbishop joined the Coordination Council of the Church Against Xenophobia and Discrimination and International Human Rights Alliance, which has consultative status with the UN Economic and Social Council. In a video statement published on this particular site, that one mentioned, the Archbishop explained that, like before, he was detained for questioning and his documents were held until his plane had already taken off. He said, "I tried to make a pilgrimage to the holy places where the holy hierarch Nicholas labored, having procured my round-trip ticket in advance, then having the hotel accommodation voucher. I still wound up at the border police, where I was again subjected to level 2 control, which lasted somewhere around 20 to 25 minutes maybe, but it ended 2.5 hours before the plane's takeoff. However, my passport and ticket weren't returned to me until the plane was already on the runway for takeoff." Again, this is a preventing of a clergyman who's part of this the Moldovan church, as well as the connected to the Russian Orthodox Church. This is the work of the evil one, trying to disrupt, trying to, persecuting, trying to attack, and in some instances, as I've just showed you, trying to destroy his church. It's a global thing because the Orthodox Church is all over the place, and it's global, and it's together, and with all these different churches in communion, and, the devil hates Christ Church. So I wanted to share that last one on that. The other news story I'm going to share with you is a short little piece on what's going on with Hungary and Serbia. Okay, so let's play this really quickly.
So we have some big breaking news coming out of Brussels, and that is that the Parliament, various MEPs in the EU Parliament, are pushing for the European Commission to finally remove the voting rights of Hungary. And with the voting rights...
Oops, sorry.
They want whatever EU funding is earmarked for Budapest, they want it revoked. So no more voting, no more money. And they are pressing hard for the Commission to make this policy.
Alex goes on to say that, this is actually a blessing for Hungary because, if they don't have money or funding, there's no reason for them to stay in the EU. Also, the fact that they aren't even allowing voting. So basically, they're cutting Hungary out, because Hungary has spoken against what NATO's been doing, which is foolish and reckless, trying to go to war with Russia and being belligerent and all that. And I agree. Good. I hope Hungary leaves the EU. I mean, they're basically kicking him out anyway in this particular way. They're just not saying that. So, yes, I hope Hungary leaves, and I hope the EU is eventually dismantled, as well as NATO. That's just my own personal opinion. And the other thing I'm going to share is this particular part here. Let's see.
What do you guys think? Should we do another clown world? Let's do another clown world. Stunning and brave, Kaya Kallas. From now on, whenever I have a story about Kaya Kallas, I'm just going to automatically file it under clown world, just automatically. Kaya Kallas was in Belgrade. Maybe she still is in Belgrade. And she delivered an ultimatum to Vucic. She delivered an ultimatum to Serbia. That's right. For Kaya Kallas, her ultimatum, according to the Associated Press, let me read you her quote. Serbia faces a geostrategic choice where it wants to be, Kaya Kallas said during her visit to Belgrade. Serbia's European future depends on the values it chooses to uphold. I really don't understand why it is necessary to stand side by side with the person who is conducting this horrible war in Ukraine, she said. And President Vucic was explaining his side of the story. So yes, we had a very extensive discussion about this. EU policy chief calls on Serbia to make a strategic choice between West and East. What will it be, Serbia? Will it be EU values, or will it be the East? The East, or EU values? EU values. Democratic elections. Free speech. Ursula von der Leyen. Kaya Kallas, Macron. Merz. Or will you choose the East? This is your final ultimatum from Stunning and Brave. She posted on X. My message to the authorities in Belgrade is clear. I want to see Serbia advancing towards the EU. For that, political leaders must deliver the necessary reforms and clarify the strategic direction. This is best done by restoring trust and staying true to democratic principles. That's right, democratic principles, like what you saw happen in Romania. Democratic principles. Must stay true to those democratic principles. The X account of Terror Alarm. They posted, EU's Kaya Kallas gives Serbia a final chance. Join the free world or stay tied to your Christian fundamentalism and Russia. Serbia's future depends on this choice. Which one is it going to be, Serbia? EU values or Christianity? Which one? EU values or God? Which do you choose? It's a tough choice.
There you go, Alex. Yes, exactly. You put it the right way. Serbia is obviously going to stick with its Orthodox roots and its Orthodox faith. And again, Serbia is an Orthodox country. And as I showed you in a video before about Putin and the connections between Serbia and Russia, they're both Slavic countries. They're very close. They've always been close. And they're both, as I said, Orthodox. And so, yeah, I would dump EU and stay with, the secular, globalist, worldly EU, and I would go and stick with the Serbian Orthodox and Russian Orthodox, who are putting their faith above EU values. Okay, but again, this is another attack on Christ Church. This is the point of this whole program I'm doing today. You can see all of this happening. Oh, by the way, I do appreciate Vadim and that interview with Tucker in saying that he thanked J.D. Vance for his support, showing support when he was a congressperson, his support for the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and that he was the only one, the only American congressman, and really anybody in American, but he said in the Congress, who supported, and then again he thanked Tucker. Well, this just is extra points to me for J.D. Vance. And, you know, I really like him, and if he runs in the next election, I'll really consider voting for him. Now, the last thing I have to share after showing you all of the persecutions, all of what's been going on, and this apparently has been going on for over 10 years, as we heard Adam say. And so we have that going on. The persecutions. And here I'm going to share with you prophecies from St. Lawrence of Chegnev, I forgot how to say it. And he had spoken on the prophecies of what was going to happen with Ukraine and Russia. Okay? And so that's what I'm going to read you next to wrap up this video. St. Lawrence's prophetic words about heresies and schism in the Ukrainian church. Batishka, such a loving man, told us, quote, when a little freedom appears, when the churches and monasteries are being opened and restored. This would refer to the fall of the Soviet Union, when this little freedom came about. Okay, so that little section there is about that. Then it says, then all false teaching will come out, and the demons and secret atheists, now he's saying it's Catholics, Uniats, Ukrainians, self-ordained, and others, and will fiercely take up arms against the Orthodox Russian Church, its unity, and its conciliar nature. A godless authority will support these heretics, and therefore they will take churches away from the Orthodox and slaughter the faithful. The Metropolitan of Kiev, not worthy of the name, together with his like-minded hierarchs and priests, will strongly shake the Russian Church. The whole world will be amazed at his lawlessness and will be frightened. He himself will go off into eternal perdition, like Judas. But all these slanders of the evil one and false teachings will disappear in Russia, and there will be one Orthodox Russian Church. Yeah, Chernigov. He said these decades and decades ago. This is a long time ago that he had said these. So, let's see, when was he, I'm trying to see, when was he alive? I'm thinking many years back. So, okay, Lawrence. So he was born in 1868, you see, and he shared a prophecy all the way back in the late 1860s to early 1900s, I would say, about this. And it has been unfolding over the past few years now. I find that very interesting that he's talking about this, as I said, at that time, and look what's going on. It's been happening. So, but you see, the end is all of this evil is happening, but it won't win out. So, that's what I had to share with you. A lot, I know, I've gone on, but thanks so much. If you've stuck with me this whole video, thank you so much. And please follow my channel, like my videos if you like them. Share my channel, share my videos. Follow me on Rumble. Subscribe to my channel on YouTube. I thank you for your support and for your continued support and watching and liking my videos, and comment if you have any comments on this. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful evening. I have to go eat dinner now. Until next time.